Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. There is nothing that I dislike more in regards to the way government and politics works in the United States than corruption. Nothing gets done when corruption is ensconced in the government itself. When you're creating laws, and the only people who those laws are there for are people who don't necessarily have massive amounts of cash. You don't have access to massive amounts of power. When you have a country like that, it means that the plutocrats, the people who are in the upper echelon, the quote-unquote governing class, and the people who pay those governing class have effectively become above the law. I don't care what party that's associated with. I don't care who that is. If you catch Bernie Sanders in some kind of banking scandal, some kind of scandal where he's being corrupt, then yes, I want Bernie Sanders in a prison cell. Until those things take place where you clean out your government of these corrupt individuals, nothing changes. Nothing changes. I don't care who that is. Well, regardless of your party affiliation, regardless of who you're supporting, at the very least, there should be a basic level of integrity that corruption is not a part of this process. This just came out. Trump administration waives punishment for convicted banks, including Deutsche Bank, which Trump owes millions. All those people out there who've been screaming about Hillary Clinton, all those Trumpsters who've been saying, lock her up, she needs to be put in prison, she's been breaking the law, she's been skirting campaign finance laws, not to mention the Clinton Foundation has been a slush fund for a time in the prison, when she was Secretary of State. Are you going to scream as loud about this? Are you going to scream as loud about this? George Kushner getting $30 million from Israel while working in Israel, while working in the capacity of Israel. Does the fact that he got $30 million and he have investments have anything to do with Trump moving the embassy to Jerusalem? What about this? What about this? What about this? Is the fact that Trump owed millions of dollars part of the reason why he's waiving punishment for these banks? Is it? If your same standard for Hillary Clinton is that, oh my God, there's a massive conflict of interest there, and she seems to be leaning in the direction of people who are giving them that money, isn't the same true here? How do you defend Trump on this if you're going to go after Hillary Clinton for the exact same thing? A fundamental level of honesty with regards to corruption in the government or nothing changes. We can have an argument of ideas. We can have this debate on whether or not, the American public will go for something that I want versus something that you want. They should not be motivated by the people who are paying you. And putting cash in somebody's G-string should not be the term, or should not be the motivating force behind the policies and the things that these guys espouse. And you damn sure shouldn't let banks that were convicted of crimes off, especially banks where you're owed millions, where you owe millions to. It's fucking amazing. The Trump administration has waived part of the punishment for 5 mega banks whose affiliates were convicted and fined for manipulating global interest rates. One of the Trump administration waivers was granted to Deutsche Bank, which is owed at least $130 million by President Donald Trump and his business empire, and has also been fined for his role in the Russian money laundering scheme. The waivers were issued in a little noticed announcement published in the Federal Registry during the Christmas holiday week. How come less than 2 years after the candidate Trump promised, I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder? Under laws designed to protect retirement savings, financial firms whose affiliates have been convicted of violating security statutes are effectively barred from the lucrative business of managing those savings. However, the punishment can be avoided if the firms manage to secure a special exemption from the United States Department of Labor, allowing them to keep their status as qualified professional asset managers. In late 2016, the Obama administration extended temporary 1-year waivers to 5 banks: Citigroup, JP Morgan, Barclays, UBS, and Deutsche Bank. Late last month, the Trump administration issued a new, longer waivers for those same banks, granting Citigroup, JP Morgan, and Barclays 5-year exemptions. UBS and Deutsche Bank received 3-year exemptions. In the year leading up to the new waiver for Deutsche Bank, Trump's financial relationship with the firm has prompted allegations of a conflict of interest. What do you mean allegations of a conflict of interest? He owes him $130 million. Are you telling me that being owed $130 million in no way sweetens you or puts you in a particular position with interacting with that particular institution? Like, come on. It's not an allegation of a conflict of interest. It's a goddamn conflict of interest. Call it what it is. The bank has not only sought the Labor Department's waiver from the administration, it has also faced scrutiny from the Justice Department and 5 separate government-appointed independent monitors. Meanwhile, the New York Times recently reported that federal prosecutors subpoenaed Deutsche Bank for bank records about entities associated with the family company of Jared Kushner, President Donald Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor. All of these interactions with the Trump administration and the federal government are transpiring as Deutsche Bank serves as a key creditor for the president's businesses. Trump owed the German bank at least $130 million in loans, according to the president's most recent financial disclosure form. Sources have told Financial Times that the amount of money Trump owes Deutsche Bank is likely around $300 million. The president's relationship with the bank dates back to the late 1990s, when it was one major Wall Street bank willing to extend him a credit after a series of bankruptcies. He failed in business. They gave him nobody else will do business with him. In 2016, the Wall Street Journal reported Trump and his companies have received at least $2.5 billion in loans from Deutsche Bank and co-lenders since 1998. The relationship has had problems. After the financial crash, Trump defaulted on $640 million loan from the bank. Deutsche brought Trump to court, and the famously litigious real estate mogul countersued for $3 billion in damages, claiming the financial crisis was a force majeure event that Deutsche Bank helped create. But the rift was short-lived, the parties settled, the loan was repaid, and Deutsche Bank was soon lending to Trump again. Let's see. So right here. Less than 3 weeks later, the New York Times reported federal prosecutors had subpoenaed Deutsche Bank records related to White House senior advisor and Trump's son-in-law Kushner and his vast bank holdings. There is no evidence those subpoenas were related to the Mueller investigation. The subpoenas come less than a year after Deutsche Bank was fined $425 million by New York State for laundering $10 billion out of Russia. All 5 of the banks granted waivers from the Obama and Trump administration were fined for their involvement in the Libor scandal that led to $9 billion worth of fines from regulators around the world. Deutsche Bank has paid $3.5 billion for its role in the scandal, more than any other bank. The scandal involved illegally manipulating London's interbank offered rate, or Libor, which is used to set the cost of borrowing for a variety of financial transactions. In 2015, Deutsche Bank pled guilty in the United States to wire fraud for its role in the scandal. Less than 2 years later, in the final hours of the Obama administration, Deutsche Bank agreed to $7.2 billion settlement with the Justice Department for misleading investors in mortgage-backed securities between 2006 and 2007. That amount is a pittance. That amount is a pittance. That seems like a big amount. For that bank, that amount is just a pittance. I want to read this part again, just so we understand what's going on. It's read a lot. The Trump administration has waived part of the punishment for 5 mega banks whose affiliates were convicted and fined for manipulating global interest rates. One of the Trump administration waivers was granted to Deutsche Bank, which he's owed at least $130 million by President Donald Trump and his business empire, and has also been fined for his role in Russian money laundering scheme. The waivers were issued in a little notice announcement published in the Federal Registry during the Christmas holiday week. They were essentially trying to bury it. This comes less than 2 years after the candidate promised, "I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder." Under laws designed to protect retirement savings, financial firms whose affiliates have been convicted of violating securities statutes are effectively barred from the lucrative business of managing those savings. The point of this is, he's giving them a waiver to deal with accounts, let me see, retirement savings of financial firms. Essentially, firms that have been shown to be somewhat corrupt in their dealings and have shown that they can't be trusted in dealing with these particular assets. They've been barred from it. Donald Trump is giving them a pass on this. Now, Obama also gave him a pass, so let's be fair. But Trump's pass is longer than Obama's pass. And besides being longer than Obama's pass, I mean, his exemption is being longer, meaning in terms and duration than Obama's exemption. He has up to $300 million in loans. They're saying at least 130, but one of the other reports show $300 million in loans. Should the President of the United States be interacting with banks that he himself has financial ties with? That's the first question. The second question, if it was problematic that Hillary Clinton had the Clinton Foundation and was receiving money from one end of the foundation and doing favors for the other end of the foundation, why is it not problematic that Donald Trump is invested or has financial ties with this bank to the tune of $130 million to $300 million and is granting favors for this and other banks? This seems immensely problematic. That's my point. And for the guy who said, I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder. I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder. Yeah. We hear you. We hear you, Trump. You're a big tough guy. If this is not corruption, what is? And I understand, yes, Obama gave him the waiver, but let's be honest, Obama was also paid handsomely by these guys as he was running. This is the same guy who said, I'm standing between the banks and the pitchforks. Is Obama the person that Trump wants to be considered to be on his side of in something like this? Meaning the guy who, after the financial crash, after Wall Street tanked the economy, after trillions of dollars were drained from the economy, after people lost their homes and their assets, after all this stuff took place, the Democratic president gets in that office powered by hope and a shitload of money from Wall Street and says, I am standing between you, meaning the plutocrat bankers, and the rest of the American population that actually wants to affect a certain amount of justice. So the guy who said, I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder, standing beside that guy, the protector of plutocrats, Barack Obama. Donald Trump is now a part of this process. And Donald Trump, again, being more grotesque in this, gives him more of a pass to mess around with people's retirement savings, including one of the banks that he has a $300 million, what do you want to call it, interaction with, a financial tie with. If one is corruption and one is problematic because of conflict of interest, meaning Clinton and her interactions, Obama and the money that he was given by Wall Street, how is this not just as problematic? And if you're a Trumper, if you're one of these people who think Donald Trump is fucking awesome, can you be honest with yourself and say you didn't like it when Obama was protecting the banks, you didn't like it when Hillary Clinton was getting a huge amount of cash and turning around doing favors for that cash? Why do you think it's okay that the President of the United States, that has this kind of financial tie to this particular bank to the tune of $300 million, the same president that couldn't afford to give his campaign $20 or $50 million, even though he calls himself a billionaire, that guy, he's in it to the tune of $300 million, and doing what seems to be a favor for this particular bank? That is problematic at best. That is problematic at best. And Donald Trump should stand by the, I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder. And he should have said, I don't think it was a good idea that Obama gave these guys a pass on the punishment that was enacted on them for their previous behavior. And I am not going to allow these guys to mess around with our voters or the people who voted for me retirement savings. Particularly when they've been convicted of violating security statutes. I mean, come on. Come on. I will leave it at that. I need to understand the argument for Trumpers on why this is okay. Why is it not okay for Hillary Clinton to get money in the Clinton Foundation and do favors? Hillary Clinton would say, well, look, I'm not doing favors. This is just a policy I would have enacted regardless. I would imagine you don't believe that. I would imagine most people don't believe that. Then why do you believe this? Why do you believe this? I leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks guys.